Larkspur, population dwindling, progress stagnant.
That was the joke, Clara Miles often muttered to herself as she walked the dusty streets, her boots kicking up puffs of red dirt. Larkspur, nestled deep in the heartland of a future America that had somehow regressed, was a town forgotten by time, or perhaps deliberately left behind. The internet was a myth, cell phones were relics, and the only connection to the outside world was through crackling radio waves.
It was my window to a world beyond Larkspur's invisible borders, a world I yearned to understand.
Clara, a girl of 17 with a shock of black hair and eyes that mirrored the vastness of the night sky, found solace in the static and hum of her late father's ham radio. Her father, a man who always spoke of stars and galaxies, had instilled in her a thirst for knowledge, a yearning for something beyond the mundane rhythm of their isolated existence. The old radio crackled to life each night, filling her small room with the voices of truckers, weather reports from distant towns, and the occasional cryptic message from fellow hobbyists. But Larkspur, despite its reliance on archaic technology, had its secrets. One of them was a frequency etched into the corner of a faded notebook her father left behind. A frequency shrouded in warnings and underlined with a sense of urgency that sent shivers down Clara's spine.
I had always been drawn to it, that forbidden frequency, like a moth to a flickering flame. But tonight, curiosity finally overwhelmed caution.
Her fingers, slender and nimble, danced across the dials, tuning the radio with practiced ease as the static reached its peak. A voice, faint and distorted, pierced through the white noise, sending a jolt of adrenaline through her. The voice was low, almost a whisper, yet it carried a weight that belied its quiet intensity. It spoke of secrets, of lies, of a truth that had been buried beneath layers of deception.
I listened, my heart pounding in my chest, a strange mixture of fear and exhilaration coursing through my veins.
The voice, distorted and fragmented though it was, felt strangely familiar, like a long-forgotten memory resurfacing from the depths of her mind. She couldn't shake off the feeling that this was bigger than just another cryptic message. This felt different, dangerous. The words, though barely audible, hinted at a conspiracy so vast, so deeply rooted, that it threatened to unravel the very fabric of their existence in Larkspur.
I knew I couldn't ignore this. I had to know more.
There was only one person in Larkspur who might understand, who might believe her. Ezra King, a tech whiz ostracized for his unorthodox theories and his uncanny ability to scavenge and restore discarded technology. He was a pariah, a social outcast, but Clara saw in him a kindred spirit, a fellow seeker of truth in a town that seemed content to exist in blissful ignorance.
I found Ezra in his workshop, a haven of wires, circuit boards, and scavenged computer parts, his hands moving with the precision of a surgeon as he tinkered with a disassembled drone.
He listened intently as Clara recounted the events of the night, his brow furrowed in concentration. When she finished, a slow grin spread across his face, a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Ezra, with his unruly brown hair, perpetually inquisitive eyes, and a mind that raced ahead of his words, was a whirlwind of energy as he examined Clara's radio. He spoke of scrambled frequencies, government firewalls, and the possibility of a hidden signal buried beneath layers of static.
This is incredible, Clara. There's definitely something here. We just need to peel back the layers.
His enthusiasm was contagious, and soon Clara found herself swept up in his conviction. They spent hours huddled over the radio, their combined knowledge of electronics and cryptography proving to be a potent combination. As the night wore on, they managed to isolate the signal, peeling back layers of interference to reveal a series of coordinates.
The coordinates. They point to a location just outside Larkspur, the old radio tower.
The tower, a relic from a bygone era, stood tall against the backdrop of the endless plains, a silent sentinel guarding secrets best left undisturbed. It had been off-limits for as long as Clara could remember, surrounded by a barbed wire fence and patrolled by Sheriff Holloway, a woman whose silence was more unnerving than any threat. Their investigation led them through the dead of night, their footsteps muffled by the rustling wind as they navigated the overgrown paths leading to the tower. The air crackled with an almost palpable tension, a sense of being watched, of unseen eyes following their every move.
My hand trembled as I reached for the rusted lock on the gate, my heart pounding against my ribs like a captive bird.
The tower hummed with a low, insistent thrum, a physical manifestation of the secrets it held. Inside, dust-covered consoles and flickering monitors hinted at a past life, a time when this place had pulsed with activity. Ezra, his eyes gleaming with a mixture of excitement and apprehension, navigated the labyrinthine corridors with an almost preternatural familiarity, as if he had been here before, in another life, perhaps.
Clara, look at this. A hidden room.
They discovered a hidden room, its entrance concealed behind a wall panel that swung open with a groan. Inside, they found rows upon rows of servers, their blinking lights casting an eerie glow on the faces of the two teenagers. This was no ordinary radio tower. This was something far more sinister, a secret that someone had gone to great lengths to conceal.
This is Project Echelon.
Ezra, his fingers dancing across a keyboard, managed to access the mainframe. As lines of code scrolled across the screen, a name flickered into existence, sending a chill down Clara's spine. Project Echelon. It was a name her father had whispered in his sleep, a name that had haunted her childhood nightmares.
Project Echelon? I can't believe it.
Their moment of discovery was shattered by the sound of heavy footsteps echoing down the corridor. Sheriff Holloway, her face a mask of stoic authority, stood in the doorway, her hand resting on the holster at her side. Her silence was more menacing than any accusation, her gaze piercing through Clara and Ezra like shards of ice.
You shouldn't be here.
Sheriff Holloway's voice, deep and resonant, echoed through the room, each word measured, deliberate. Her eyes, hardened by years of keeping secrets, held a mixture of warning and something akin to sadness. It was clear that she knew more than she let on, that she was bound by loyalties that ran deeper than Clara and Ezra could comprehend. They were taken to the sheriff's station, a small, nondescript building that reeked of stale coffee and unspoken truth. The interrogation room was Spartan, furnished with only a metal table and 2 chairs. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the ticking of the clock on the wall, each tick a stark reminder of their predicament. Sheriff Holloway, her gaze unwavering, revealed fragments of the truth, each revelation more unsettling than the last.
Project Echelon was a government experiment, a top-secret program designed to control the flow of information, to shape the narrative, to keep the population of Larkspur isolated and compliant. The radio tower was not just a transmitter, but a beacon, a means of monitoring your every move, your every thought.
And then came the most chilling revelation of all. The voice on the radio, the one that had started Clara on this journey, belonged to her father. He had discovered the truth about Project Echelon, had tried to warn the outside world, but he had been silenced, his death masked as an accident. The signal, the coordinates, it was all part of his plan. A message from beyond the grave, a desperate plea for someone to finish what he had started.
The weight of this revelation settled upon me like a physical burden, threatening to crush my spirit. My father, the man who had taught me about constellations and the vastness of the universe, had been silenced for daring to speak truth to power.
Larkspur, her home, the only world she had ever known, was a gilded cage, a carefully constructed illusion designed to keep its inhabitants trapped in a state of perpetual ignorance. The thought of returning to that life, to living a lie, was unbearable.
But what could we do? We were just teenagers, up against a force far greater than ourselves.
The full scope of Project Echelon, the extent of its reach, remained shrouded in mystery, but one thing was clear. They were playing a dangerous game, one with potentially deadly consequences.
We need a plan, Clara. We can't just rush into this. We need to expose the truth without putting ourselves in harm's way.
No, Ezra. My grief fuels my anger. My sense of justice overrides my fear. I have to honor my father's memory. We have to break free from the chains that bind us.
Sheriff Holloway, her face etched with a weariness that spoke of years spent guarding secrets, offered them a choice.
You can remain silent, return to your lives as if nothing has changed, or face the consequences of your actions. The decision is yours to make, but the weight of your choice will hang heavy in the air.
Clara knew in her heart that there was only one path forward, however perilous it may be. The truth, once unearthed, could not be reburied. Silence was not an option, not anymore.
My father's sacrifice, his desperate plea for justice, echoes in my ears. We have to act. We have to fight for a future free from the shackles of deception.
She convinced Ezra, his initial hesitation giving way to a grudging admiration for her unwavering resolve. They formulated a plan, a desperate gamble to expose Project Echelon to the world, their only weapon, the radio tower itself.
We managed to evade Sheriff Holloway. I think she might even understand, maybe even sympathize with us.
Back at the tower, they raced against time, their fingers flying across keyboards as they worked to override the system, to send out a distress signal, a beacon of truth that would pierce the veil of secrecy surrounding Larkspur.
As the sun began its final descent, casting long shadows across the desolate landscape, we initiated the sequence.
The tower hummed with renewed energy, its antenna reaching toward the sky like a giant finger pointing accusingly at the heavens. The air crackled with anticipation, with the weight of untold truths about to be unleashed. Clara's voice, amplified 1,000-fold by the power of the radio tower, boomed across the airwaves, reaching far beyond the confines of Larkspur. She spoke of Project Echelon, of the government's deceit, of her father's sacrifice.
My words, raw with emotion, filled with a righteous anger that resonated with a truth that could no longer be denied, crackled through radios in homes and vehicles across the land.
The town of Larkspur, plunged into darkness by a sudden power outage, erupted in chaos. The streets, usually deserted after nightfall, filled with confused and frightened residents drawn from their homes by the sound of Clara's voice, a voice that shattered the illusion of normalcy they had clung to for so long.
The consequences of our actions were immediate and far-reaching. The signal, amplified by the tower's network, spread like wildfire, breaching firewalls, infiltrating communication channels, reaching a global audience. The world, for the first time, was forced to confront the truth about Larkspur, a truth that had been hidden in plain sight, concealed beneath layers of technological manipulation and enforced ignorance.
In the aftermath of Clara's broadcast, a new kind of silence descended upon Larkspur. It was the silence of uncertainty, of a future yet to be written. Project Echelon, exposed to the light of day, crumbled under the weight of its own lies.
The radio tower, its purpose subverted, stood silent, a stark reminder of the past, a symbol of the power of truth to shatter even the most carefully constructed illusions.
Clara and Ezra, hailed as heroes by some, condemned as traitors by others, found themselves at the heart of a maelstrom, their lives forever changed by their actions. The fate of Larkspur, once a forgotten backwater, now hung in the balance, its future uncertain, its destiny intertwined with the choices of those who dared to challenge the status quo.
As the first rays of dawn broke over the horizon, casting a warm glow on the town below, I stood at the foot of the silent radio tower, my gaze fixed on the endless expanse of the open road. The world beyond Larkspur awaited, a world grappling with the revelations of the night, a world on the cusp of change.
And as she took a step forward, leaving behind the only home she had ever known, she carried with her the memory of her father's voice, a voice that had whispered of truth, of courage, of the power of a single voice to change the world.